Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Claire's Circle. Today we're going to talk about nesting, that powerful primal instinct that drives expectant parents to prepare a safe and perfect home for their baby. But what happens when one partner's vision of preparing turns that nest into a place of chaos and danger? What if one person's pride becomes a direct threat to the well-being of another? This story comes from a subscriber named Leah. It's about a home renovation, her husband's pride, and her escalating fear for her and her unborn child's safety. A year ago, Leah and her husband, David, achieved their dream. They bought their first house. It wasn't a new, shiny suburban home, but an old, charming fixer-upper, as the realtors say. It needed a lot of work, but they were both full of enthusiasm. David, according to Leah, was a passionate fan of all kinds of home renovation shows. He spent hours watching videos on how to lay tile, install drywall, and replace wiring. He was convinced he could turn their old house into a masterpiece with his own two hands. At first, Leah was supportive. He successfully completed a few small projects. He painted the bedroom, retiled a small bathroom. Each success boosted his confidence. He felt like a true provider, capable of creating a cozy home for his family. When they found out Leah was pregnant, David's joy was mixed with a new wave of determination. That same evening, he presented her with his grand plan. He announced that before the baby arrived, he would completely, down to the studs, renovate the entire first floor. He'd knock down the wall between the kitchen and living room, replace all the wiring and plumbing, refinish the floors, and create the perfect nursery. His logic on the surface seemed flawless. "Think about it, Leah," he said, his eyes shining with excitement. "We'll save tens of thousands of dollars. We can start our family life without huge renovation debts. I'll do it all myself. It will be my gift to you and our baby." David's enthusiasm was infectious. Even though deep down Leah was worried about the timeline, she agreed. She trusted her husband. The demolition began with a furious enthusiasm. David worked every weekend and every evening after his job. Walls came down, old floors were ripped up, and their house was instantly plunged into chaos. A constant, omnipresent layer of construction dust covered absolutely everything. Leah tried to keep up with the cleaning, but it was a losing battle. She was dealing with severe morning sickness, and the smells of old wood, dust, and dampness made her constantly ill. But she endured it, telling herself it was temporary, that it was all for their beautiful future. The first red flags appeared about a month in. The project immediately fell behind schedule. David, who had a full-time job, simply didn't have enough hours. What looked like a one-day job on YouTube took a full week in reality. Tearing down a wall revealed it was load-bearing and required complex reinforcement that he knew nothing about. A quick plumbing job for the kitchen sink resulted in a leak that ruined the basement ceiling. He was constantly on the internet trying to learn as he went along. His confidence began to be replaced by irritability. Leah's anxiety gradually shifted from the mess to actual safety. She was in her 4th month, and her nesting instinct was screaming danger. She read a few articles about how old houses, like theirs, can have lead in the paint, and that the construction dust could be toxic for a pregnant woman and the fetus. She shared her concerns with David. He brushed it off, calling it pregnancy paranoia. "I'm being careful, don't worry." But she saw otherwise. She saw tools scattered on the floor, nails sticking out of boards, open junction boxes with live wires exposed. She felt like she was living not in a home, but on a hazardous construction site. She began to be afraid to walk through her own house, especially in the evenings when she was tired. The breaking point came at 30 weeks pregnant. The due date was less than 3 months away. They still didn't have a functional kitchen. They were cooking meals in a microwave in the basement. There was a hole in the living room ceiling. The nursery was just bare drywall. Leah sat David down. She tried to speak as calmly and lovingly as possible. She showed him the calendar. She told him how much she appreciated his hard work and his dream, but that their main priority now was safety. She offered a compromise. "Let's use our savings and hire professionals to just finish the most difficult and dangerous work, the electrical, the plumbing, the floors. And then he could do the finishing work, the painting, the trim." David's reaction was explosive. He took her words not as a reasonable suggestion, but as a vote of no confidence, as an accusation of his incompetence. "So you don't think I can do this? You don't think I'm capable of providing a home for my own family?" He accused her of not appreciating his hellish work, his sleepless nights. He stubbornly insisted he would finish it all himself, that he just needed a little more time. A week later, an incident occurred that became the last straw for Leah. In the evening, walking to the bathroom, she tripped on a loose floorboard that David was supposed to have nailed down a week ago, and she fell. Thankfully, she fell sideways onto a soft rug, and she and the baby were not seriously hurt. But in that moment, she felt a primal terror. Lying on the floor, she prayed not from pain, but from fear, and from the feeling that her worst nightmares were coming true. She called David, still sobbing, and told him what happened. She expected to hear panic, apologies, a promise to rush home immediately. Instead, she heard an irritated and defensive voice on the phone. "Well," he said, "you just need to be more careful and watch where you're walking." And those words decided everything. For Leah, it was no longer about a renovation, or missed deadlines, or dust. It was about her husband prioritizing his pride over her physical safety. She realized he was incapable of admitting he was wrong, that he had taken on more than he could handle. His need to prove he could do it himself was stronger than his instinct to protect his pregnant wife. The next day, while David was at work, Leah packed a bag. She wrote him a long letter and left to go to her parents' house in the next town over. In the letter, she gave him an ultimatum. "You have until my due date to make this house safe. I don't care how you do it, hire a crew, take out a loan, but do it. I will not bring our newborn baby into a dangerous construction site, and I will not live with a man who tells a pregnant woman right after she's fallen that she should have been more careful. I am now living in my childhood bedroom, 36 weeks pregnant. My husband is alone in our half-demolished house. He calls me every day. Sometimes he begs me to come home. Sometimes he accuses me of abandoning him and betraying our dream. I feel terribly guilty for leaving, but I also know I was terrified of staying. And I have to ask, am I the asshole for leaving my husband and giving him an ultimatum about our home renovation? Or was I right to prioritize my and my baby's safety over his pride and his DIY dream?"